This session was played March 5th, Sunday last week, right after the previous recap. However, chronologically, the events of this tale take place a little earlier on in our characters' histories, as there were not enough players to continue the main story. So we did a little quirky one-shot instead. And this tale begins early in Zane's apprenticeship under Jeeves, as well as early into Jar's employment at Pulley Printing. And Jeeves has a little job for them that's not at all suspicious and pulls them aside with the following directive. If they can go to the Waterdeep and retrieve a sample of the walking statues therein, they'll give them some rewards. Namely, for Jar, 35 gold pieces. 30 for the job, 5 to stay quiet. And it's not disclosed here, however Zane is later gifted a spell scroll of sleep for their troubles. Exciting. Of course, Toyser overhears the entire thing, and no one has any say in whether or not he can come, as he just decides to. And our heroes trek off. The two adults making their way by foot to the City of Splendors, as Toyser, what's the word for it? Just kind of stows away on a boat there, getting to the city about an hour earlier than the other two heroes. Toyser causes some mischief in the town, immediately getting captured. Well, not immediately, this goes on for about an hour and getting captured, and two guards begin escorting him to the south gate to kick him out of the city. And the two other heroes appear, Jar and Zane, and are able to retrieve the child and take them under their care. The guards are more than happy to deposit this cryptid with these two adventurers. And as soon as Toyser is back in their care, he immediately takes off, just running, and finds himself in the Yawning Portal and listens to a story from Durnan. The other two finally catch up and are like, okay, but we gotta go. Which Toyser goes, that's interesting, there's some apple juice over there, and begins to chug-a-lug some beer unintentionally. This has an unexpected effect on the young lad, as it mellows him out extremely, canceling out his unpredictable and oftentimes dangerous nature. However, one of the quirks of this mellowness is that he can only communicate in deep speech. Jar looks at the child and goes, that's interesting, and just stows him away in the sack. And they begin making their way to the Sentinel-turned-apartment complex, the Hawkman. As they get there, Jar begins climbing the statue to get to a, less visible vantage point to get a piece of it, and Zane keeps watch. Good thing too, as a guard is almost immediately alerted to Zane and accuses them of loitering. Zane uses his fast-talking skills to keep the guard occupied as Jar makes his way into the eye of the Hawkman and begins trying to retrieve a sample. Initially unsuccessful, as Toyser almost falls out of the bag and Jar has to catch him. And then, unfortunately, with a unfortunate natural one on the attack roll to retrieve some of that good sample with their magic scimitar, they alert the guard with a loud sound. Luckily, Zane is able to turn this around by continuing to fast talk this lass, and asks for a tour of the apartments inside, to which the guard agrees. And the two become fast friends, and she completely forgets about the sound she heard up on top, as Jar is able to retrieve a sample and get out. After a quick little house tour, the guard gives Zane her name, Manyara, and says that he should come again soon. And the two split as friends. Jar later appears, poking Zane in the back, and makes true on a promise he made to Toyser while they were about to fall to their deaths, saying that if they didn't die during this, he'd get Toyser some corn. They make their way to the marketplace and retrieve just that, some nice, buttered, juicy corn, to which Toyser eats it like a granola bar, as in chomping down on it instead of just eating the kernels. With that horrifying display, they begin making their way towards the Sword Maiden, which has also had a bit of quirkiness to it. The Sword Maiden was almost completely destroyed during a previous crisis about 100 years back, and her head lies in a courtyard surrounded by trees, and has been converted into a shop called Thort's Findings. Our heroes enter the shop and begin looking around and find some curiosities, such as a medallion of Tiamat with 5 points, a mask of an Cult of the Dragon Initiate, and buy those for about 5 silver. And Thor's like, oh, that's weird. Huh. Yeah, I just kind of sell anything I find. And they're like, okay. And Zane, once again, employs the strategy of fast talking to distract Thort, as Jar moves his way further into the statue and goes to retrieve a sample. Quickly successful, an unintentional consequence occurs, as after Jar gets a sizable sample of the statue's stone, it begins to rumble. Initially, Thor thinks it's an earthquake and asks everyone to hit the deck, as it doesn't seem to be that, as it starts to rotate and move. The statue seems to be coming back together. Terrified, the heroes regroup at the mouth of the statue, well, the entrance of the store, that is, and Zane exclaims that they have to jump. Jar, initially not wanting to do that, tries to figure themselves out as Zane and Thort jump, feather falling to the ground, and Jar, just in time, manages to place a grapple hook and start belaying down before being crushed by the reconstituting rubble. They make their way down, a crowd gathers, and a riot occurs, and it is soon dispersed by Lady Blackstaff herself, as she appears, Vajra, coming to quell the crowds and just like, okay guys, what the hell is going on? And the two feign ignorance, saying, oh my god, we have no idea what happened. And she's just like, okay, whatever, I'll put this in the report. Are you guys okay? They say yes. And she's like, all right, enjoy your stay in Waterdeep. And she goes off to deal with the bureaucracies of the situation. While no one is looking, the Sword Maiden quietly thanks our heroes for reconstituting her back into being, and they depart, returning home and getting their rewards. And that's the end of our small tale for today.